Oh man. To be fully honest, this game is a mixed bag. It's a real mixed bag. There are things I do like about it for sure, but overall, yeah, this is rather weak. Especially coming off of The Evil Within. Yeah, this game doesn't live up to that series at all. And they could have done so much better. It's just boring, man. It's like everything is a collectible. Yeah, stop and pick this up. Stop and pick that up. Stop and grab this over in the corner 10 feet away. It's fucking annoying, man. And then they have these enemies in the game. A lot of them are damage sponges. Like, I hate fighting these things. Shit is ridiculous. They take so much damage. And I'm playing on normal difficulty. Like, I'm not even playing on hard mode. The game is also very stingy with ammo. Like, it doesn't give you enough ammunition. You gotta, like, roam around the environment and break things just to get ammo. As soon as you run out of ammunition, you're like, fuck. They just give you a bow and arrow, and the bow and arrow doesn't do shit. Oh man, this is fucking nuts. They didn't release this on PS4 either, I don't think. For those who don't have a PS5 and you're stuck on PS4, yeah, you dodged a bullet here. This shit is kind of... This shit is kind of whack, to be honest. Ghostwire Tokyo was developed by Tango Gameworks and published by Bethesda. And this marks a new IP for the studio that brought us The Evil Within, whose producer is none other than the great Shinji Mikami, who created Resident Evil, and also directed the first Evil Within, although he did not direct this game in particular. And what Ghostwire Tokyo is an open-world first-person shooter that has a supernatural element. Essentially, this game is Dishonored meets Ghostbusters. It just takes place in Japan. There's also a hint of the Middle-earth series, as the player takes control of two characters throughout the entire game. One that's a living spirit named KK, who resides in Akito, and Akito is on a mission the entire game to save his little sister. And that's just the basics of the story. So quickly getting into the pros, the shooting mechanics are very tight, and the game in general controls with an approximate smooth manner, despite that the turning sensitivity is a bit too low. And there is no quick spin mechanic like what you find in some of the recent first-person Resident Evil games. This game could have used something like that for certain. Too often throughout the game, you'll run into a wall, or you'll run into some kind of object in the environment, and you have dozens of enemies surrounding you, but there is no immediate way to quick spin. And so that creates some issues with the combat system, especially during later combat sequences, scripted combat scenarios late in the game. Graphically, this game has some of the best skin textures I've ever seen in a game. And the weather physics with the rain, especially with the ray tracing activated, is truly a sight to behold. It's a beautiful showcase with the engine firing on all cylinders, appearing to the player in the form of a canvas that's full of life. Unfortunately, there is a downside to this that I'll get into later. Also, the atmosphere is something else that works a grand deal in this game's favor. There's other games that have been released recently that have been praised for their atmosphere, like Elden Ring, which is a bunch of bullshit. This game has true atmosphere, true mystery, as you are literally the last person alive in a fictional Tokyo that's been overrun with ghosts. As you roam around the city, clothes of civilians lie scattered around the streets. Apartments and various buildings alike have an ominous tone that's unavoidable and haunting. The presence of ghosts can leave an eerie feeling that's threatening and sometimes terrifying. Basically, forget Elden Ring. This is what true atmosphere looks like. However, unfortunately, that's where the pros end. And now I'm going to move straight into the cons. Ghostwire has some very solid shooting mechanics, but the same can't be stated for the combat system as a whole. One major problem that persists throughout the entire game with Ghostwire's combat system is the lack of diverse ways to engage enemies. You essentially have three powers: wind, water, and fire. One that's rapid fire, one that's widespread, and one that's explosive. The dominant power you use throughout the game is wind. The other two are only used conditionally. You also have some various items that the player can manipulate in combat, but none of them are really necessary or useful with the exception of the stun talisman. And again, this is just conditionally useful throughout the game. The game does have a defined stealth system that the player can use throughout. However, considering that the AI can quite easily detect the player, and the player character is a massive powerhouse anyway, the stealth system is also a useless system that Tango Gameworks developed to force some kind of gameplay diversity in areas where it really doesn't fit. And coming off of another far superior stealth game with Hitman 3, by comparison, the stealth here feels extremely underdeveloped. Another issue is the traversal system, which never truly gives the player a fun way to traverse through the open world map. Most of your traversal literally is running on the ground from one location to the next. There is a way to go on the rooftops and glide through the air, but both of these methods of exploration are frustratingly limited. You can only get up on the tall buildings through the use of tethering yourself to one of the Tengu creatures, so if there's not one around, or there's not one you can reach visibly on screen, then there's no way up at all. As for gliding, if you jump off a tall structure, then you can casually slide through the air, similar to what's in the Far Cry games with the wingsuit, just with holding down one of the face buttons. But you can't gain any more airtime, and the open world just isn't big enough to accommodate the mechanic in the first place. By comparison, the Far Cry series, specifically with the last 3 games onward, has a ton more options for traversing the environment, which is sad considering Ghostwire Tokyo is also a first-person open-world experience like Far Cry. The story and side missions presented here are easily forgettable, and very one-note that at times makes the plot too complicated, and at other points too simple. The characters are hard to digest as they only speak one language, which is Japanese, and the dialogue is presented in the form of subtitles on screen. Even Ghost of Tsushima had an English option to avoid language barriers for other territories outside of Japan. It seems that Tango Gameworks felt that it wasn't necessary to localize the script to other languages, which is a strange choice, considering that the game was released to other territories. I say the biggest problem with this game, however, really is the performance. Now, I played this game on both my laptops. My first, which is my Asus K571 GT, has a 9750H processor and a 1650 GPU. And every single game that I've played from start to finish on here, I'm going to list in this retrospective so it can be highlighted just how piss poor Ghostwire Tokyo's performance is on PC. Now, obviously, I don't know how the game runs on console. I believe this game is only available for the PlayStation 5 on console, not even the PlayStation 4. So I don't know what the game's performance is like on the PlayStation 5, but on PC, this game runs like shit. I've tried every setting under the sun. I've tried turning off upscaling on both laptops. And I also played quite a bit of this, especially towards the beginning, specifically the first 3 chapters of the game on my newer laptop that I just did an unboxing for, which is the MSI GE76 Raider, which is one of the fastest gaming laptops that you can buy. And the version that I got is the 3060 GPU with an 11800H processor. And the game ironically ran worse on that compared to my Asus model, which is backwards, because that's a much stronger laptop by comparison. No matter what I did, I just could not get the game to run right. It ran a lot better on my Asus, but it was still noticeable that the game suffered from frequent frame rate drops and just stability issues when it came to performance in general, regardless of which laptop that I used. So that was a consistent issue that I had with this game. And I've never had these issues with other games that I've played on PC. Lastly, there just isn't much content here for the player to consume aside from a monolithic collectathon with spirits that are scattered around the map, and regrettably, the player is actually forced to collect them, as that's the fastest way to gain experience for use in one of the 3 different skill trees, each with nodes that are too expensive to reasonably complete. This is yet another game that's a completionist nightmare, which could have been handled far better with the progression system. There's other small things that I can mention, but in the end, Ghostwire Tokyo is a rather strange experience that starts out okay, but noticeably grows weaker long before the credits start rolling. Needless to say, I believe most would agree that while it's appreciated that Tango tried something different, what they should have done is just scrap this game entirely and develop The Evil Within 3. It's not a high disappointment considering I didn't expect much with this game to begin with, but it certainly won't be remembered for much and will soon be forgotten rather quickly.
アキト、もう取りつかれんなよ。死神は俺みたいにいいやつじゃねえからな。
なんだよそれ、勝手に取り付いておいて。